There's a particular type of gamer that enjoys grindy games. I can think of a few people that love the grind, and I myself like the grind on some games, the games who reward you well for spending the time, of course. Some games are grindier than others, and some have the good type of grind, and well, some have the bad type of grind. The games on this list aren't particularly bad, some are actually in the category of being some of our favorite games of all time. That doesn't change the fact that you need to spend an arguably unhealthy amount of time to get to mid to late game content. We've taken some of the games that we found to be the grindiest and compiled a list. So here is our list of the grindiest games of all time. Ark is a game that really is unlike any other. Although I guess Palworld now takes a bit of inspiration from it, but Ark has such a unique way of navigating when you first start out. There's just so much to do. You have to survive from the dinosaurs, fend off other players, and try not to starve or die from dehydration. There's a lot going on. Early game is pretty simple and easy, just grab berries and stay alive. And the game gets grindy later on though, when you're not just worrying about the hunger, but also clans and taming dinosaurs of your own. The taming is the main time consumer, especially if you're on an official server. It just takes so long to tame. I mean, hours and hours and hours. You need to knock out the dinosaur, feed them, keep them alive and healthy. It's just a very grindy process, but very rewarding, I will say. If you get into the late game stuff like mechs and tech dinos, then it just gets super grindy. I'm not saying this is a bad thing. The game is actually very rewarding. It's just one of those games where if you plan on starting it, just expect to be playing it for a lot of hours.
Warframe is a free-to-play game, and free games usually have a bad rep when it comes to the way they are created. They usually exist to make the player want to spend money to bypass a lot of the grindy parts of the game. But with Warframe, it's a very grindy game with the exception of the store. Some people have called it pay to win, but it is not that at all. You can't buy resources that will help you with your grind. You can buy new Warframes that have different abilities or unlock things early, but those things aren't necessary to play the game. The reason that the game is grindy is that there's a lot of RNG when it comes to getting the resources that you need. You aren't guaranteed to get the stuff you need for your upgrades or new weapons, so it can be very frustrating and grindy. The game has definitely dumbed down the grindiness to it, but when it first released, some people have said that it took them hundreds of hours to get an item that would take a few hours to get now. It is definitely easier, but it is still a grind for the new content they added, and if you're looking for a game that will take hundreds of hours of your time if you want to get into it, then go check out Warframe.
There's a good argument to be had that any roguelike or roguelite game is a game based on grinding, which is the same way with the survival genre, which are games based on collecting as much as you can only to die and start over. But in a case like Project Zomboid, it's one of the grindiest survival/roguelike games that you can even play. You can be bit by a zombie and be infected for in-game days or many real-life hours before anything actually happens. Walking around the destroyed town, trying to find supplies, and just barely avoiding zombies can take a lot of time, and when you die and start over, it takes even more time. It's one of the most unique zombie survival games that you can play right now, but any fan of this game will generally agree that the fun of this game is starting over and seeing how long they could survive. Whether you consider it grindy or not, it's still a different take on a couple of genres that have been done time and time again, and I think it's a game that fans of the survival genre should check out.
I love Rust. Some of my best gaming memories are from Rust. It's like each playthrough that me and a group of friends do is a whole new storyline with lore. We meet new people, form new alliances, and create enemies on the server. It's just such a good game. Rust, however, is very grindy, especially on official servers. The game actually wasn't originally all that grindy, when the Decay update came out, that's when the game became a time suck. It used to be that you can have a base, and as long as you were active and I believe open the door every now and then, your base would stay there. Then they made an update where you had to put in materials in your cupboard in order for your base to stay up. On official servers, this meant not only did you have to expand your base and fight off neighboring players, but you had to consistently log in to mine materials and keep your base up. We usually now play on unofficial servers where the decay rate is cut in half or so. It's an amazing game, but can take a lot of your time.
Black Desert Online is a Korean MMO, and if you are familiar at all with that type of genre, you know what you are in for. The reason that it's grindy is so that you will spend money to lessen the grind. Yes, people say that the whole point of the game is to grind, and that is true, but you can spend real money to boost yourself or even get materials. The game itself is pretty decent as MMOs go, and there are people that swear by it, but it's probably one of the most grindy MMOs you could find. If you're going for a more casual experience and just want to enjoy the game, you can, but if you want to get into the endgame content, that is when it gets really annoying. There are people with thousands of hours in the game, and that is not an exaggeration. Some people even say that it takes hours just to reach the next level when you start getting to the higher digits. But when it comes to the graphics and combat, it does very well in those regards. If you are looking for a grindy MMO that will make you want to die with the amount of grinding you need to do, then you should definitely check out Black Desert Online. It's pretty cheap now, and it is worth checking out for that specific reason alone.
This one is going to be a bit controversial because I've never heard it called grindy before, but Stardew Valley is literally about working the fields and tending to animals for an indefinite period of time. Sure, you can go fishing and exploring caves and all of that other fun stuff, but if you want to progress, you need to go through several in-game years of waking up, watering or harvesting the fields, planting, selling it at the market, and then hoping you have enough energy left so you don't collapse in the streets from exhaustion. It sounds really tedious when described like that, but honestly it is one of the most relaxing games you can play. The game can be enjoyed by fans of almost every genre, and if you play in multiplayer then it's even better. But no one can deny that the developers managed to make a game that forces you to perform hard labor in order to not be broke, but somehow that's extremely fun and addicting.
The bigger your hoard, the more difficult the purge, and better the rewards. Speak with your treasurer to proclaim your wealth.
Conan Exiles was a game that I remember playing a few years ago. It's a great game with a lot of unique mechanics. One prominent feature of the game that I really remember was the absolute grind to get a decent status on a server. The game allows you to eventually leverage the power of a god to attack enemy bases. The issue is that it takes hours and hours to get to that point, and even then, you only have that support from the god for a limited amount of time. I also remember it being a grind to find and gather materials, build your base, and create somewhat usable tools and armor just to survive against natural threats. Amazing game and definitely something worth playing. I would just keep in mind that if you plan on going for endgame level content, plan on dumping a whole lot of hours to get there.
Cora, if you tell me this is a practical joke, well, it kills me to say it, but I would be really impressed.
Impressing.
Destiny 2 has been in a lot of controversy since it released. If you go and look at Destiny 2 right now, you will see that it is free to play, but it didn't start out like that. After the third expansion was released in the game, they went free to play and screwed everyone over who purchased all the content in the game. The base game was $60 and the DLCs were $40 a piece. But this change didn't make the game any better. That aspect of the game isn't why it's grindy though. To get anywhere in the game, you will need to own a DLC that is not vaulted. Apparently, in order to make the size of the game smaller, they deleted content that people had previously paid for, so you can't get certain things now. The grindiest part of the game though is the exotic weapons and gear grind. There are hundreds of exotics to go after, and they are pretty cool, but it takes so long to be able to get the ones you want, especially newly added ones. The gameplay makes up for itself since it is extremely fun to this day, but if you don't want to grind, then you can get the good stuff. The gameplay itself makes up for it since it is still extremely fun to this day, but if you don't want to grind, then you can't really get the good stuff.
If you ever try to search for the grindiest game of all time, many people will immediately say RuneScape, or specifically old school RuneScape. Most fans generally agree that RuneScape 3 has more quality of life features, and that old school is generally the more grindy game. It's very well known that the game is filled with bots that grind for people, and people who try to scam newer players in order to save some time grinding. Even still, the game has had a loyal fan base for a long time. With old school RuneScape being on mobile devices, you can take the game everywhere you go and never stop grinding. There are plenty of grindy games that have been around a long time, but old school RuneScape is one of those that has managed to stick around, while many others have died out.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for this video. We hope you enjoyed our list, and if we missed any, leave them down below in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.